Everyone knows Nintendo. You might even own some Nintendo stuff, or you might be a complete and utter Nintendo fanboy. Either way, there still might be a thing or two that you don't know about this gaming Goliath. And so, without further ado, I give you 10 things you didn't know about Nintendo. Probably.
Nintendo owns the Seattle Mariners. Well, by proxy. Late Nintendo chairman Hiroshi Yamauchi purchased the Mariners in 1992 when their owner was pressuring to sell or move the team. Hiroshi stepped up and kept the Mariners in Seattle, and he did it all in the name of baseball, a sport that was very popular in his home country, Japan, which is pretty cool. As a result, the Seattle Mariners field has some cool Nintendo stuff. You can even order the food there using an app on your 3DS. Now that's luxury.
Nintendo is often credited as being the company that single-handedly saved the video game industry, or at least the in-home gaming part. Back in the 70s and early 80s, Atari was enjoying a tight grip on the gaming industry. Games weren't much in these days, but people had never seen this stuff before, and it sold incredibly well. Other tech and toy companies saw their success and entered the market with their own games, often Atari rip-offs and wannabes. The oversaturated market was focused on making these games cheaper for consumers, as opposed to more entertaining. The cheaper things got, the more competitors dropped out of the market, and video games became a withering mess in North America. Japan's gaming industry was booming, however, thanks to arcade support and early home console success. Nintendo in 1984 released the Famicom system, a home console marketed at families. Nintendo was even brave enough to bring their new tech to North America in the form of the NES, despite its current outlook on the video game industry as a whole. All these people had played was Atari though, and others like it. Now they were being exposed to the NES and Super Mario Bros. The console was a hit, and went on to sell famously throughout the late 80s. Nintendo knew, if these people had something good to play, they'd play it.
Amiibos weren't always planned to be part of the Wii U. The reason the Wii U gamepad has an NFC chip in it is thanks to the Pokemon Company. They saw the success Skylanders was having and decided to implement similar tech for the new game Pokemon Rumble U. The game and the toys had little success and were forgotten until Nintendo decided to make their own toys called Amiibo for the upcoming Smash Bros. Wii U release. They've been a resounding success, selling 10.5 million of these little toys worldwide and have been implemented into nearly every Nintendo game since.
Staying on the topic of Amiibos, Nintendo had the opportunity to venture into the market of small game-compatible toys long before the Amiibo's conception. They were originally approached in 2011 by Fred Ford and Robert Reich, founders of Toys for Bob, to aid in the distribution of their new game, Skylanders. Nintendo hesitated, and ultimately turned down the offer, only to have it bite them in the ass later. Skylanders has made over $2 billion in sales to date.
Nintendo has many talented people within its staff, but this guy created one of their longtime classic series when he was only a teenager. Masahiro Sakurai was only 19 when he created Kirby, working at HAL Laboratories. After creating Kirby and its sequels, Masahiro was working on a new fighting game with 4 players. He presented his prototype to a coworker, Satoru Iwata, who helped him continue on the project. To be sure the game would sell, Sakurai wanted to use Nintendo characters in his game, but he knew he would never get permission. He did it anyway and presented the prototype to Nintendo, and the idea was greenlighted. The game would end up being Super Smash Bros. 64.
While being very fun in our opinion, the Wii U has been regarded as one of the worst consoles in Nintendo's history, only just surpassing the sales of the GameCube this past summer. Although this is not true, that title actually goes to the Virtual Boy. Ah yeah, you guys remember this thing. If anyone's actually seen one or used one, could you please tell us about it in the comments, because Nintendo only shipped about 350,000 of these things before they were discontinued. What can I say about this thing? The games were mediocre, the 3D gave people headaches, and every game had that weird red tinge. Ew.
The Wii Remote as we know it today was originally planned to be a secondary peripheral for the GameCube. The controller's development was started to try and add something to the GameCube's experience and lengthen its lifespan. Nintendo commissioned several tech companies to design controllers and present them to Nintendo. One company's prototype actually looked somewhat like what we know as the Wii U gamepad, with analog sticks and a touchscreen. Ultimately, this design was turned down because it would make Nintendo's home console similar to its handheld counterparts, and we were left with the Wii Remote and nunchuck we have today. Nintendo eventually decided against releasing the Wii Remote for the GameCube and released it as a primary controller for the new console, the Wii. Probably a good move. The Wii has gone down in history as being one of the best-selling consoles of all time.
While the Wii U is very indie-friendly, Nintendo wasn't always so warm towards these smaller studios. In their defense, the boom of indie games was a relatively new phenomenon, and an indie studio wasn't exactly easy to define. In hopes of not wasting their time on shovelware, Nintendo would only publish indie titles that were produced in an office building, and not developers using their homes as studios. This kind of makes sense until you realize that a lot of indie games are made by first-time developers without the benefit of capital for a working space. I can't even imagine how many projects Nintendo turned down because the developers didn't look professional enough. Thankfully, this dark age of indies on Nintendo has given way to the indie tsunami that has been hitting every other platform. Why is Nintendo so stubborn about this stuff?
Nintendo, although being regarded as one of the kingpins of the video game industry, is actually a very old company that used to produce playing cards. The Nintendo company was even responsible for introducing Western-style playing cards to Japan and eventually the rest of the world. Here's a weird fact. Nintendo even worked with the Walt Disney Company in 1959 to produce playing cards that featured famous Disney characters. The playing cards were a smash hit, with kids growing Nintendo's youth division exponentially. This boom would motivate Nintendo to start making games for children. Over a decade later, in 1973, Nintendo would reveal the Laser Clay shooting system, one of the first toys to implement optoelectronics. In 1974, Nintendo had devised a way to put the game into an arcade machine and began shipping them to North America and Europe. This Laser Clay machine would be the precursor to the game Duck Hunt.
Patches and DLC are the norm in video games today, but Nintendo was trying to implement such technology way back in 1986 on the Famicom. Nintendo started selling the Family Computer Disk Drive system to expand the functions of the Famicom. They also began installation of the disk writer to rewrite game software. The tech would have allowed for Nintendo to rewrite and even add code to existing games, potentially fixing game bugs and even adding DLC. Ultimately, this tech had a short lifespan and wasn't implemented outside of Japan, so who knows how well it would have worked. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, then please leave us a like or leave us a comment. If you're new to our channel, then think about subscribing. Until next time, guys.